Well, you're most welcome to this video, Monday the 10th of October. Now, probably literally thousands of people have been writing in saying, who do we trust? How do we know what the evidence is? And that's what we're going to be talking about in this video, because I'm very concerned about this as well. It's never been as eroded as this in my long career, as far as I can remember. Now, in healthcare, we assess the patient's need. We plan what we're going to do about it. We carry out some sort of intervention, and then we evaluate the effectiveness of that intervention, and if necessary, go into another cycle. But we can only intervene if we have a rationale for that intervention. We have to be able to say why we're intervening. And that rationale really has to be based on some sort of natural science, some physiological or pathophysiological process. So it's got to be based on an empirical observation, preferably some research data findings. And this is consistent with the founding father of evidence-based medicine, David Sackett, who said you need three components. Some empirical evidence that it works. We need, if there's no empirical evidence, we can use expert opinion, consensus expert opinion, and it's got to be consistent with patient preferences. Now, the first thing I want to talk about here is the Institute for Scientific Freedom. Now, this is from them. All science should strive to be free from financial conflicts of interest. Financial conflicts of interest. Now, I'm not going to conduct an official YouTube poll on this, but if you think there's currently financial conflicts of interest going on in the way that healthcare data is interpreted, put your hand up now. Some of you think that. All science should be published as soon as possible and made freely accessible. Of course, this should be open for public discourse. All scientific data, including study protocols, should be freely accessible, allowing others to do their own analysis. All science and scientific methods need to be open to international peer review. And the question is this always happening? So I just want to take one example today, really. This is again from the Institute of Scientific Freedom, and it's based on this open letter that's published in the British Medical Journal. Now, this was late last year, 17th of December 2021. We did look at it at the time, but it fits in this context again today of the concerns that many of us currently have. So, open letter from the BMJ to Facebook about censoring of serious data integrity issues with Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. Now, this is what it happens to be about, but this is basically about this concern about censorship. Now, this is from Fiona Godlee, who was then editor-in-chief, and then Kamran Abbasi is now the editor-in-chief of the BMJ. And I'm just delighted to see that they take responsibility and accountability for this. We are responsible for everything the BMJ contains. So they are saying, this is our domain. We'll answer questions about this. We're accountable for this. I wish everyone would do that. Very refreshing. So this is the letter. Dear Mark Zuckerberg, the BMJ, one of the world's oldest and most influential medical journals. Now, there's a good review of the history of the BMJ here. Some fascinating old articles. And the first one was published on the 3rd of October, 1840, not 1940. 1840. So I think we could say that the British Medical Journal is well established. Anyway, going back to the letter, serious concerns about the fact checking. We have these people who put themselves up as fact checkers. Would you like to call yourself a fact checker? Please do. You can put whatever your name is, then in brackets, fact checker after it. It seems anyone these days can call themselves a fact checker. Or a debunker. It's these are thrown around rather lightly. Being undertaken by third-party providers on terms of Facebook Meta. This is the BMJ letter. Now, this example. In September, a former employee of Ventavia, a contract research company helping carry out the main Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine trial, began providing the BMJ with dozens of internal documents, photos, videos, etc. Now, this was the article on that we did cover at the time as well, because there was some interesting data came out of that at the time. Anyway, carrying on with the letter. These materials have revealed a host of poor clinical trial research practices occurring at Ventavia that could impact data integrity and patient safety. So this is serious because, in the BMJ's opinion, it could impact patient safety. We also discovered that despite receiving a direct complaint about these problems over a year ago, the FDA did not inspect Ventavia sites. Why did the FDA not inspect Ventavia's sites is another interesting question. Don't know quite what the FDA does, but I would have thought that would be one of the things they did. If I'm wrong, the FDA Food and Drug Administration can contact me. The BMJ commissioned an investigative reporter to write up the story in our journal. The article was published on the 2nd November, which we've looked at, following full review by the BMJ's authorities, legal and peer review. COVID-19 researcher, so this was the article here, COVID-19 researcher blows the whistle on data integrity issues in Pfizer's vaccine trial, which is the example we are using. But from November the 10th, readers began reporting a variety of problems when trying to share our article, strangely enough. Some reported being unable to share it. Many others reported having their posts flagged with a warning about missing context. Independent fact checkers, here's these fact checkers again, say this information could mislead people. So these fact checkers say. But as we say, who fact checks the fact checkers? And what's a fact checker anyway? Anyway, those trying to post the article were informed by Facebook that people who repeatedly share false information might have their posts moved lower in the Facebook newsfeed. Group administrators where the article was shared received messages from Facebook informing them that such posts were partly false. Again, remember, this is people sharing the article from the British Medical Journal. Readers were directed to fact checked, performed by Facebook contractor named Lead Stories, according to the British Medical Article Journal. And this is one of their pieces here, and we'll look at some critique of this in a minute. So, fact checker. The British Medical Journal did not reveal disqualifying and ignored reports of flaws in Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine trial. Now, to me, that's not quite English, so would concern me if the title wasn't quite in English, given that is supposed to be the language medium that this is in. The grammar is difficult to understand, shall we say. So not an auspicious start. Anyway, we find that the fact check performed by Lead Stories to be inaccurate, incomplete and irresponsible, according to the British Medical Journal. Pretty strong words. Inaccurate, incompetent and irresponsible. They go on. British Medical Journal letter goes on. Remember, this is their letter to Mark Zuckerberg. It fails to provide any assertions of facts that the BMJ article got wrong. So it's not actually say. So the BMJ is saying it doesn't actually say what they got wrong. It has a nonsensical title, as we just looked at. a bit strange, really. Why did they not get that in proper grammar? The first paragraph inaccurately labels the BMJ as a news blog. Okay, one of the world's, if not the world's oldest medical journal, is now a news blog, apparently. It contains a it contains a screenshot of our article with a stamp over it stating flaws reviewed, despite the Lead Stories article not identifying anything false or untrue in the BMJ article. It published a story on its website and URL that contains the phrase hoax alert. So, are they really saying, I don't think they'd be saying this, surely they're not saying this, that the BMJ deliberately perpetrated a hoax. We've contacted, BMJ have contacted Lead Stories and Facebook, of course. But they don't want to change their article. So about their article actions. So that's the complaint there. We've also contacted Facebook directly requesting immediate removal of the fact-checking label and any link to the lead story article, thereby allowing our readers to freely share the article on your platform, talking about Facebook. There's also a wider concern that we wish to raise. We're aware that the British Medical Journal is not the only high-quality information provider that's been affected by the incompetence of Meta's fact-checking regime, according to the BMJ. To give another example, we would highlight the treatment by Instagram, also owned by Meta, of Cochrane, the international provider of high-quality systematic reviews of medical evidence, and that seems to be based on this Twitter discussion here. But Cochrane, of course, is a well-known medical evidence database. The letter goes on: rather than investing a proportion of Meta's substantial profits to help ensure the accuracy of medical information shared through media posts, you have apparently delegated responsibility to people incompetent in carrying out this crucial task. Pretty strong words. BMJ saying they were incompetent to carry out this crucial task. Fact-checking has been a staple of good journalism for decades. What has happened in this instance should be a concern to anyone who values and relies on sources such as the British Medical Journal. Then we hope that you will act swiftly to rectify this. So there you go. Getting back to what they say on the Institute for Scientific Freedom, all science should strive to be free from financial conflicts of interest. All science should be published as soon as possible and made freely available. All scientific data, including study protocols, should be freely available, allowing others to do their own analysis. And this requires peer review. That means articles written by, for example, researchers, medical researchers, should be reviewed by their peers. That's someone who's also a medical researcher who's competent to do that work. Someone of equal stature, experience, and qualifications. Another scientist, whereas in some instances journalists, for example, have set them up as peer reviewers. So there we are. This is just part of the concern that we have, that we're not getting the full evidence. So obviously, as we've said on many times on this channel, we need to follow the evidence wherever it leads. So the evidence changes and we go with it. That's all we've got in scientific healthcare, to follow the evidence. And if we're not getting the evidence, and the evidence is being juggled around as a commercial profit-making commodity, as expressed in this Institute for Scientific Freedom, it should be free from financial conflicts of interest, then the erosion of the trust in science and medical research is a massive problem, and could in itself cause many potential, so much harm, pain, suffering and death if people don't trust good quality medical data. And that is now, in my view, a problem. So I will always try and give you the best understanding that I have, but of course I don't have full understanding, so you have to get other medical sources to get information from. But that's currently the problem, because we live in a fairly dictatorial age, unfortunately. Now, on a slightly lighter note, Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology is awarded every year. Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, and this year it's awarded to Svante Pablo, who I have actually been following myself to some extent because I feel I'm particularly interested in, for his discoveries concerning the genome of extinct hominids and human evolution. So this is the guy that sequenced the Neanderthal genome, this now extinct, apart from the genes that are in us, species of hominids. They also discovered Denisova, So what we have in obviously we've got us modern Homo sapiens, but then there was other Homo sapien Neanderthalis in Europe and moved over into Asia, and we interbred with them at an early stage. So I haven't had mine tested, but I'm probably about 1 to 2% Neanderthal genes in me, as indeed in you, if you as long as you don't live in sub-Saharan Africa, where there's not interbreeding with Neanderthals, but everywhere else, Japan, China, Aborigines in Australia, anywhere you want to think of that isn't sub-Saharan Africa, we have got some Neanderthal genes in us. And he also discovered Denisova, which is another group of ancient hominids. There was this cave where a monk called Denis used to live in, so it was called Denis's Cave. So the Denisovans, that's where they got the name from. But they also interbred with early humans and migrated east towards Oceania and Australia. Fascinating story. I'm not going to go into it. Don't know it all anyway. Gene transfers of both into modern humans, absolutely fascinating. This ancient flow of genes to present-day humans has physiological relevance today. So the genetic makeup can affect our physiology today. For example, affecting how immune systems react to infections. And that is not my words, that's from the Nobel Prize website. So fascinating there. Interesting, of course, to note that the Nobel Prize for Medicine this year has nothing to do with the pandemic. It's about evolutionary and early hominid genetics and indeed modern genetics. So well-deserved Nobel Prize. Congratulations to Svante Pablo, Swedish geneticist, a man who prizes evidence very highly. I'm going to leave it there. You'll have your own thoughts, as indeed do I. Thank you for watching.